now, suffused with corruption. The world is already ended. It is now just a memory in the aftermath. An aftermath in the memory. They want to obtain control. They use various rackets for this purpose. It's the final commodity in the war of will against will. This is not a new thought, but is the very essence of the consequence of German romanticism, to say the least, the aftermath of its disappointment, the stifling of possibility by the so-called upper classes using every means of warfare at their disposal in order to suppress their own populations has become an actual reality, as it was fated to be. And that's the condition in which man finds himself, whether he realizes it or not, and he tends to prefer not to realize it. But in general, he's disavowed the principles of his own culture and his own religion to which he pays lip service, and from which sprang all the institutions that give him even the fraction that he's allowed of what their full potential is. So he's basically a slave and won't admit it. And there's obviously a slave class, and they are beholden to make the license plates for the Federal Reserve System, basically. That's basically what it boils down to, making license plates for the Federal Reserve System. It, in turn, allows them the freedom to operate within certain parameters as long as they're producing license plates. The license plates that they make are the sort of tokens of exchange that enable the farce to continue. The slave class operates in this way. Then there's the managerial class, that they're equipped with some prerogatives that are not even known to exist by the slave class. Like, the slave class does not know that these prerogatives exist, and they involve DHS-managed technologically enhanced rackets that amount to psychological warfare operations right here on our own soil. I mean, just literally, they're right out of the goddamn Army recruitment video for psychological warfare, what they're doing. It is a racket, to say the least. It's a treasonous racket, and it's also an act of war. So they've declared civil war de facto by their actions. Assassinating presidents is not high on their list of capabilities, actually. They have better capabilities than that. So with that going on, there's no hope of an actual good faith. And this has been, of course, enforced. The systems have been enforced by those who are willing to be the muscle for the racket, who are willing to do the deed. And I was willing to do the deed in my day, not knowing what the hell the deed really amounted to, really. It had something to do with honor, and it had something to do with, well, really for me, honor. And I had to fight my way through a lot of bullies in that process. Try and take the high road and the better road, and these motherfuckers trying to drag me down the entire time. I knew something was wrong with this whole goddamn thing. It couldn't be just... They were running a racket on me. And it wasn't just me, but I was right in the middle of it, and I caught them in the act. They tried to gaslight me this whole goddamn time. Psychological fucking warfare to reinforce a fucking racket that is a fucking act of war and a treasonous betrayal of all that are affected by it. And all who are even in it, because they're dupes as well. They don't realize that they're destroying themselves and their country. But that's fine for them. They're happy with it because they're going to be rewarded. So they're just going to betray everyone else. Snark. That's where their snark comes from. This knowledge that they betrayed these other people and they don't really have to fucking give a shit what they think. They're disposable. They're actually bought into that shit. So they're clearly serious about this crap. Or at least that's what their cult has taught them to believe is a serious agenda that they're going to actually conduct. But from the looks of it, they could actually have pulled it off. And they may still do so. I mean, that's how they want to go. That's how they want to do it. That's how they roll and all that shit. So maybe they don't all. I don't know. There seems to be some possibly controlled resistance to them, but I don't know if there's real hostility between them or not. I haven't seen any direct evidence of it. Certainly not on the level that I'm at. So regardless, either way, there's no sense that the fundamental racket is going to be altered. They'll just go into the other hands. Somehow they have their way of shifting their ranks about, or appearing to, and that's sufficient for them, as long as the racket's maintained. That's why we do see people with $7 billion in their their $7 billion fucking dollars in their bank account. And that's funny, because what that means is he can control $7 billion of units of people's time, energy, and attention. Period. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that, but that's what that implies. Now, if he's just a figurehead for the moving of that money, if that's what he's tantamount to in their system of racketeering, very believable. They could easily hem him in from all sides and just basically try to thwart him in his use of his resources. They could find ways to run a racket on him, basically. But he's already tied in well enough that apparently he's willing to play some kind of ball with the rest of them involved, where they don't have to worry about him. He's not gonna thwart the entirety of this system. He's just... Now, I don't know if they actually do that, or if they're actually muscling in on each other, if there's actual dichotomy or actual separation of forces. It's indeterminate. I literally have no direct evidence of that being the case. But I know the dupes exist under it. And the license plate makers. And of course, I was one, and that was because... What the hell is you gonna do? They take that away by covertly blacklisting somebody from work while running rackets on them at their workplaces. That is an act. That is a criminal act, and that's not the only place they do things like that. So they'll run a racket at where I live, run a racket at where I like to go to hang out, to do something, to exercise, to eat, to study, any fucking thing. Any fucking thing. They have actors, agents, assets at their service to fuck with that shit. And these fucking punks, these fucking bitches just roll over and do that crap. For what? Pat on the back, gift card, favor of some other kind? Is there a covert network that transacts these deeds so as to keep the racket glued together, which is their main purpose? That's why they're rewarded. I mean, there's got to be propaganda to go with it. Are they in cults? So religious cults, professional cults, as it were, cults of certain professionals. It just goes on and on. These guilds exist in harmony with these rackets because there's no one going to perform a deed in the midst of such things without answering to them. It's one or the other. Either you're going to answer to these damn rackets or they're going to strangle your ass out of a fucking profession. I'm not even going to what they did to me. But at every turn, it was there. Whether I knew it was there or not. And it had its impact. And it stopped looking like dumb luck or my own fault or bad luck even. Bad luck ends. So this is clearly a fucking racket. But I was able to find out, I mean, just on that, just on the odds, but I was able to find out their mechanisms, generally those involved, how it operates, how it's rooted into historical precedent, and how it is operating in terms of covert layers that would exponentially deviate how it operates from how one would expect it to operate without knowing about those covert layers, such as psychotronics, instant communications networking and fifth columnry, and covert internet topologies, just to name a few. But their whole gaslighting technique, the methodology, is itself probably one I should start bringing to the forefront, which would be Psywar, which is a little different than just any other type of spycraft, or it's really actually an attack. So it's not merely surveillance. And so all this is going on. And they catch them in the act. And they want to spout, they want to act, they want to front their virtue while they're performing these deeds, or allowing them to go on under their direct supervision or with their cooperation. How about that shit? And all fucking random idiots can do is think I have time to fucking look at their sorry asses. Play who's gonna go first at the intersection. The pedestrian has the right of way. If he defers, that's tantamount to using his right of way. Okay, doofus? The same thing. You fucking go. You drive your fucking killing machine on through and get the fuck out of the intersection and stop blocking oncoming traffic, fuckhead. Because if you were gonna wait like that so patiently, you should have fucking waited before you made the turn, observing the crosswalk in advance. There's no time for the bullshit. It's T-boning. You want a T-bone? People doing that shit as part of a racket, because I doubt they're doing it on their own, that shit's over. This shit is going to be considered a crime. It's Psywar. You're not just some fucking innocent dipshit. These things are detectable. They're traceable. The commands that go through the dirt boxes, there's dirt boxes on the dirt boxes, or there should be. There's records of all the communications. No one is not surveilled on that can be surveilled on by the system. So it could be used easily against them. But, yeah. That would possibly tend toward justice if that happened. Like catching a fox by its own trickery. But I highly doubt it. And so we'll see a continued changing of the guard, whatever that's worth. And, I mean, it's good that the pedos are getting taken down, supposedly. Some of them, certainly. But I'm sure that the deeper control grid simply can't get by without it. So if they're not going to get rid of the deeper control grid, they're thereby not getting rid of what's being done to the children, which means those involved in the power structure right now are literally supporting that. All for the Behestus Maximus at the top of it. All he does is show a nuance in his countenance, and then these things get done. Wow. What a crime. That's a meta crime right there. They're running meta rackets. I mean, they are taking things to the next dimension of evil. Yep. Yeah, so they're way beyond just weather modification. It's social engineering now. Human beings are just various forms of nature to be manipulated. And for what purpose? Well, to optimize conditions for those who are the clientele of this system of control, so that they can experiment on in a stable way people, if that's what they wish to do, or they can arrange events for their own amusement, entertainment, edification, quite efficiently without having to play by the rules that are inherent to the system's inner activities. And they are free to manipulate events to reach outcomes as they see fit whenever it bears upon their living conditions, all without having to adhere to the actual law, and whether in spirit or letter. And so that's how that's their commodity now. Clearly, it's for their entertainment overall. It's whatever they want to do with it. It's really disposable in their sight, or rearrangeable. It's modular. It's how they view it. It's how they view the dupes and the slaves and even the handlers. The handlers are on leashes too, and they've got their own bureaucratic pressures, one must suppose. And so if that's the case, how there are any genuine shifts in power is beyond me. There's got to be a constant hierarchy. And so the offices are facades, and the officers are facades, and the constant hierarchy is directly behind it. And that's all there is to it. And one supposes this is true even for the hierarchy behind it, because this hierarchy behind it is going to have to answer to a fundamental force or essence which will drive this hierarchy and derive from it all of its due. And one can tell by the nature of the hierarchy that this essence has to be evil. But of course, the shifting hierarchies are there so that people can engage with the system as if they had any actual say in it. One can tell by the mechanisms it employs, not only that the essence that it's derived from and which will draw due from it is evil, and hence that whatever due it draws must be blood from the innocent, but also likewise that this system has to be understood to be fundamentally engineered for this purpose, so that its activities, however they appear on one level, are actually in the service of extracting this innocence, this blood from the innocent. And so this is its parasitic modality, but it uses psychotronics and other rackets to the best of its ability to arrange this. And so, yeah, the power structures that seem to be behind the power structure that's visible to the people as their government and other agencies and institutions is actually the one behind it, say, for example, be it the Vatican or the City of London, or if it be even if it were somehow that they were direct puppets of, say, the royalty of Europe. Those would themselves be, first of all, the royalty of Europe, the mobile and facile grouping of authority, because of the simple fact that they are changeable. But their changeability is much slower than that of our government here, and therefore one suspects they could even stand in as the actual power, because they rule over their entire lifespans. But the powers that, and the same could go for also the Vatican, but the role of the Pope begins only after he is elected. So it's a different process, and therefore more facile. One would suggest that less electable in that sense, and a more, so in other words, a Jesuit order, some deeper order of some sort. But one looks at the way that operates and suspects then that it actually is a little too facile, and that some power must be behind it, just as there are behind the bankers that are in the offices at the banks in the City of London. One thinks of dynasties of families as being the likely facile form of that power. But for that to have the power that it does, there must be some system of control that gives them the power that they have. And that probably is technological, or in some other way, perhaps as the lights of most people would think, alien or supernatural. So this could be the actual nexus of the power that holds the structure in place and accounts for the malleability of it on our level, whereas there is a fixity on another level that guarantees that the outcomes that are achieved will be satisfiable to the parasite. So this is their overall scheme of existence. Of course, those who wish to be deluded by it, and they wish to accept the nectar of delusion, will occupy their roles in the facile system according to the rules of that, enabling the greater quantity of innocence to be sacrificed for whatever they throw back because it keeps appearances. That's how that racket ends up being as evil as one can conceive a racket to be. And that's why those involved, even if at the local level it's just certain forms of sabotage and misdirection and interference, fifth-ference, if you like, portmanteaus, even that still, it amounts to an evil racket. It's part of it. And as long as that exists, surely these other crimes exist and are attached to it. And they're guilty of participation in that, because I've been at the forefront in my efforts of uncovering all this and that, and they have been in opposition to me. So instead of as some false authorities or wannabe popes like Dr. Chapelone, unlike them, I don't claim it's on the basis of my personal authority or my memories and relationships involving UFOs as a child or some shit. It's derived from rightful authority because of an understanding of the issues rightly and making right judgment about it. It's not an appeal to authority. The authority derives directly from the deed.